And that's exactly why traditionally in this country, judges have always said, well, they haven't always said it, but they eventually came around to the idea that we can't involve ourselves in these questions. They're too difficult, and it's not our job. We're going to step in only the most extreme cases, right? So the current standard is, the Supreme Court case, Brandenburg v. Ohio, which outlaws imminent incitement to imminent lawless action, right? So you have to be basically saying,
let's go get them.
Go get them. Let's,
break into the White House.
Shoot that person. That's illegal speech, right? Anything short of that, we're going to stay out of it because it's too confusing. It's too complicated, right? Like if you start getting into what's satire, what isn't, what's incitement, what isn't, like as we see at companies like Twitter, you can spend endless amounts of time building sandcastles trying to figure out what is what, and it will always end in a place where the government interprets it to its greatest advantage. Yeah, and that's why we don't want it. I mean, it ultimately it's not a good thing for most people. But
it's just very hard for people to realize, even though this thing that you're talking about wielding, this weapon, will work against your enemies, it can ultimately also be used against you. That was the thing with the Patriot Act. When the indefinite detention, when they were talking about just being able to detain people, and Obama was like, don't worry, well, I would never do that. But you're not going to be the president forever. Like, someone else is going to come along. And perfect example, that next person was Trump.
Right.
Well, what if someone's crazier than him? Like, what if something happens? What if there's some sort of a nuke goes off somewhere, and then everybody gets way more radicalized, and then you can get a really fucking insane, like a Stephen King character. What was that movie where the one evil guy becomes president? And
oh God, the Greg Stilson.
Yes.
Dead Zone.
Dead Zone. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not far removed from that.
Right.
In terms of plausible plots that this wacky country can fall into. And that's the same thing with censorship. Like, they can use it against you. So, like, if you think you're using this to push back against right-wing extremism, they can use that to push back against progressive ideas that would genuinely benefit good people.
Right.
Genuinely benefit families, genuinely benefit people in need, genuinely benefit people in terms of healthcare and education. They can stop that.
Absolutely.
They can stop that if it's unprofitable with the same sort of tools.
Absolutely.
You gotta have free speech. It's the most important thing we have, and it's the one thing that separates us from everybody else. So when you have liberals and progressives that are screaming against removing people from platforms and stopping this and stopping that, understand what the fuck you're saying.
Yeah, and they don't. Right? Yeah, I mean, like,
it's just convenience. It'll work against my enemies.
You talk about how they can use it to shut down things on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, we see reports in these files of government agencies sending lists of accounts that are accusing the United States of vaccine corruption. Now, what they're really talking about is pressuring foreign countries to not use generic vaccines, right? And that's a liberal issue. That's a progressive issue. Like, the progressives want generic vaccines to be available to poor countries. Okay, but you can use this tool to eliminate speech about that if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what they don't get, is that the significance is not who, the significance is the tool. Like, what is it capable of doing?
Right.
Right. How easily is it employed? And how often is it used? And they don't focus on that. They focus on, oh, it's Donald Trump, so therefore we want it. I mean, that's where their mistake is.
It's a very interesting and very nuanced conversation as to what should be allowed and what should not be allowed and why. And I think it's complex and it's ever changing, and it depends upon the tools that are involved, and it depends upon what are you talking about. And then it also depends upon, like, here's a big one that drives me nuts about this January 6th. Why is it okay for the FBI to have agents that incite people to go into the Capitol? Why is that okay? What benefit is that for society? Like, how much influence did they have? How much rabble-rousing influence did they have? How much coercion? I mean, why is that okay?
So this is another topic that is fascinating because it hasn't gotten a ton of press. But if you go back all the way to the early 70s, the CIA and the FBI got in a lot of trouble for various things. The CIA for assassination schemes involving people like Castro, the FBI for, COINTELPRO and other programs, domestic surveillance. And they made changes after congressional hearings, the Church Committee, that basically said, the FBI, from now on, you have to have some kind of reason to be following somebody or investigating somebody. You have to have some kind of criminal predicate. And we want you mainly to be investigating cases. But after 9/11, they peeled all this back. There was a series of attorney general memos that essentially refashion what the FBI does. And now they don't have to be doing crime fighting all the time. Now they can be doing basically 100% intelligence gathering all the time. They can be infiltrating groups for no reason at all, not to build cases, but just to get information. And so that's why they're there. They're in these groups. They're posted up outside of the homes of people who they find suspicious, but they're not building cases. They're not investigating crimes. It's sort of like Minority Report, right?
Pre-crime.
It's pre-crime.
Yeah,
and the public has accepted this, without much trouble.
There's a little bit of pushback from people online, and then it goes away, where there's no real repercussions.